The world is filled with intelligent people who know exactly what to do and still lose, not because they lack talent, but because they think, hesitate, overanalyze, and wait while someone less intelligent takes the position they were too afraid to claim. Intelligence without execution becomes another form of self-sabotage. Intelligence can become a dangerous illusion when it never leaves the mind. A person can understand people, predict outcomes, study strategies, recognize patterns, and still remain powerless because they cannot turn thought into movement. This is one of the hidden traps of a sharp mind. The more possibilities you can see, the easier it becomes to find reasons not to act. You notice every risk, every weakness, every possible failure. You imagine what could go wrong so vividly that hesitation begins to feel like wisdom. But sometimes what looks like careful thinking is simply fear wearing an intelligent disguise. Watch the difference between a person who studies opportunity and a person who moves toward it. The first collects information endlessly, waits for perfect timing, and tells himself he is preparing. The second makes an imperfect move, learns from the response, adjusts, and moves again. The uncomfortable truth is that reality rewards feedback, not potential. You cannot think your way into experience. You cannot analyze your way into courage. At some point, you must place your idea into the world and allow reality to challenge it. This is where emotional control becomes essential. Acting does not mean becoming reckless. It means becoming comfortable with incomplete information. The person who needs certainty before every decision will always be slower than the person who understands how to make calculated moves while uncertainty remains. Consider someone who spends years planning a business but never launches, someone who knows exactly what career they want but never applies for the opportunity, or someone who understands that a relationship is unhealthy but keeps analyzing the other person's behavior instead of leaving. Their intelligence is not the problem. Their inability to convert awareness into action is. They are using thought to delay the moment when reality can judge them, and this is why action is psychologically powerful. Once you move, the fantasy disappears and information appears. You discover what works, what fails, who supports you, who resists you, and where your assumptions were wrong. Even failure becomes useful because it gives you something analysis cannot provide: contact with reality. The strategic mind does not demand perfection before movement. It makes a decision, watches the consequences, and adapts without becoming emotionally attached to being right. This is also why silence can strengthen execution. Stop announcing every plan. Stop seeking approval before you begin. Stop explaining what you intend to become. The more you talk about an ambition, the easier it becomes to receive the emotional reward before doing the difficult work. Build quietly and let results create the conversation. There will always be another book to read, another skill to master, another risk to calculate. If you allow preparation to become your identity, you can spend your entire life standing at the edge of your own potential. Intelligence is only a weapon when you have the courage to draw it. Otherwise, it becomes a beautiful prison built entirely inside your own mind. There is a subtle weakness that intelligent people often mistake for communication: the need to make everyone understand them. They explain their decisions, defend their intentions, justify their ambitions, and repeatedly correct people who have already decided how they will see them. Beneath this behavior is often a hidden desire for control. You want to control the story others tell about you, because being misunderstood feels like losing power. But the moment you become obsessed with being understood, you hand other people influence over your emotional state. A careless comment can disturb you. A false assumption can make you defensive. Someone's disapproval can force you to explain yourself for 20 minutes when a simple silence would have protected your dignity. The strategic mind learns a different lesson. Not every misunderstanding deserves correction. People interpret you through their own experiences, insecurities, ambitions, and limitations. Sometimes they are not seeing you at all. They are seeing their version of you. Trying to fight every interpretation is therefore an endless battle. Consider the person who begins a new career, starts building a business, changes their lifestyle, or quietly distances themselves from unhealthy relationships. Almost immediately, someone will ask questions. Why are you acting different? Who do you think you are? Why don't you come around anymore? The inexperienced person rushes to explain. The emotionally controlled person simply continues. This does not mean becoming arrogant or refusing useful feedback. It means learning to distinguish between criticism that contains information and criticism that merely demands obedience. Listen carefully, but do not automatically obey. A person who genuinely wants your growth may challenge your assumptions. A person who wants control will often challenge your independence. Learn the difference by observing what happens after you refuse to explain yourself. If someone respects your decision, there was room for mutual understanding. If they become angry simply because you would not surrender your autonomy, you have learned something important about their intentions. Silence can be powerful because it prevents you from giving away unnecessary information. The more you reveal about your plans, fears, and motivations, the more material others have to influence you. You do not need to become secretive. You simply need to become selective. Let people wonder. Let them misunderstand. Let them underestimate you while you continue building. Results have a strange ability to clarify what explanations cannot. The person who once questioned your direction may eventually understand it when the evidence becomes impossible to ignore. And if they never understand, nothing important has been lost. Your purpose was never to win universal approval. Your purpose was to become the person you decided to become. The moment you stop needing everyone to understand you, you become strangely difficult to control because their opinions can no longer dictate the direction of your life. One of the most dangerous traps of intelligence is the belief that being smart means you should already know the answer. The sharper your mind becomes, the easier it is to protect your identity as the person who understands, predicts, and sees what others cannot. But this creates a hidden weakness. You begin defending the image of being intelligent instead of remaining open to becoming more intelligent. Someone challenges your idea, and instead of listening, you prepare your counter-argument. Someone younger offers advice, and you dismiss it because they lack experience. Someone less educated points out a flaw, and your ego immediately searches for a reason their opinion should not matter. This is how intelligence quietly turns against itself. The mind becomes a courtroom where every piece of criticism is treated as an accusation that must be defeated. Watch successful people carefully, and you will notice something revealing. The most dangerous ones are not always those who know the most, but those who remain capable of changing their mind when reality proves them wrong. They understand that knowledge is not a possession, it is a moving target. Your past victories can become especially dangerous because they create evidence for your ego. You begin thinking, my judgment has worked before, therefore my judgment must be right now. But circumstances change, people change, and strategies that once worked can become weaknesses in a different environment. A business owner who refuses new methods because the old system made money, a leader who ignores criticism because their previous decisions succeeded, or a person who repeatedly chooses the same type of relationship because they believe they already understand human nature, all are vulnerable to the same psychological trap. They are not necessarily unintelligent. They are emotionally attached to being right. This is why emotional detachment is essential to real intelligence. When someone challenges you, resist the instinct to defend yourself immediately. Become curious. Ask, what if there is something here I cannot see? You do not have to accept every criticism. In fact, some criticism will be foolish, jealous, or uninformed, but you should be strong enough to examine it before rejecting it. The ability to say, I was wrong, is not weakness. It is psychological freedom. It means your identity is not chained to your previous opinions. It means you can abandon an old strategy without feeling that you have betrayed yourself. Silence can help here. Instead of responding instantly, pause. Observe. Let the emotional reaction pass before deciding what deserves attention. Often, the first impulse is the ego trying to protect its territory. The second thought may contain the lesson. The greatest minds remain students because they understand a brutal truth. The moment you believe you have nothing left to learn, you have already begun to decline. Never become so proud of what you know that you become blind to what reality is trying to teach you, because the ego that refuses correction eventually turns intelligence into its own prison. Trust is one of the most expensive decisions you make, yet most people give it away based on words, charm, and emotional chemistry. They hear someone speak confidently, see a friendly smile, feel an instant connection, and assume they have discovered a good person. But human beings are rarely revealed by what they say when everything is easy. They are revealed by what they do when circumstances challenge their interests. This is why learning to read people before trusting them is not cynicism. It is psychological discipline. Watch how someone treats people who cannot benefit them. Watch how they behave when they are denied something. Watch whether their personality changes when someone with greater power enters the room. These moments expose behavioral patterns that polite conversation hides. A person may tell you they value loyalty, but observe what they do when loyalty becomes inconvenient. Someone may speak constantly about honesty, yet notice how casually they manipulate small facts when there is something to gain. The strategic mind does not become obsessed with judging people. It becomes patient enough to observe them. This patience is powerful because most people reveal themselves when they stop performing. Give someone time. Do not rush intimacy simply because the conversation feels deep. Do not reveal your vulnerabilities because someone revealed theirs first. Vulnerability can create the illusion of trust before trust has actually been earned. Instead, watch consistency. Does their behavior match their promises? Do they respect small boundaries? How do they respond when you say no? Do they celebrate your success without turning it into competition? Do they keep confidence when they have nothing to gain from protecting your privacy? These small details matter because character is rarely hidden completely. It is simply scattered across ordinary moments. One of the most revealing tests is to remove your usefulness. Stop solving every problem. Stop giving constant attention. Stop providing easy access. Then observe. The person who values you will still value the relationship. The person who valued what you provided may suddenly become distant, irritated, or indifferent. Silence is especially useful here because it creates space for behavior to speak. You do not need to interrogate people about their intentions. Watch what they naturally do when you stop directing the situation. Emotional control is essential because charm can bypass judgment when you become excited, lonely, impressed, or eager to belong. Never let emotional chemistry make decisions that only time should make. Trust should be earned through repeated evidence, not granted because someone tells a convincing story. And remember that reading people does not mean assuming everyone is dangerous. It means refusing to be careless with access to your life. Give trust gradually. Observe without announcing that you are observing. Let people reveal themselves through consistency, pressure, temptation, and time. Do not trust the person who knows exactly what to say. Trust the person whose behavior remains honorable when there is no audience, no reward, and no reason to pretend. There is a hidden psychological trap that keeps capable people powerless for years. They wait for permission. They wait for someone important to recognize their talent, for a leader to give them responsibility, for friends to approve their ambition, or for the world to finally tell them they are ready. What they do not realize is that power rarely arrives as an invitation. It is usually built quietly through repeated action until other people are forced to acknowledge what already exists. The person waiting for permission often tells themselves they are being patient, but underneath that patience may be fear, the fear of being judged before they feel prepared. They want certainty that their decision will succeed before they make it. But certainty is usually a reward that comes after movement, not before it. Look at how influence actually develops. A person begins solving problems before anyone gives them authority. They become reliable before receiving recognition. They develop a skill before anyone calls them an expert. They take responsibility when others are still making excuses. Gradually, people begin turning toward them because competence creates its own gravity. This is the hidden mechanism behind authority. People may ignore your potential, but they rarely ignore consistent results. That is why you should stop announcing what you are going to become and begin behaving like the person you claim you want to be. If you want influence, become useful. If you want respect, become disciplined. If you want independence, learn to operate without constant approval. If you want power, first develop control over yourself. Emotional control is the foundation because someone who depends on praise can be controlled through praise, and someone terrified of criticism can be controlled through criticism. The moment your emotional state becomes dependent on other people's reactions, you have surrendered part of your authority. Learn to tolerate being misunderstood. Learn to work while nobody is impressed. Learn to make decisions without asking 10 people whether they approve. This does not mean ignoring wise counsel. Strategic people listen carefully, gather information, and then decide for themselves. They understand the difference between seeking guidance and seeking permission. Guidance improves judgment. Permission often becomes an excuse to delay it. And there is another secret. Announcing your ambitions too early can give your ego the emotional reward before your work has earned anything. You talk about the business, the transformation, the new life, and your mind briefly experiences the identity of someone successful. Then the urgency disappears. Build in silence instead. Let your actions accumulate privately. Let your competence become undeniable. Let people discover your strength rather than receiving a speech about it. Eventually, recognition becomes a consequence instead of a requirement. Stop waiting for someone to hand you the authority to become powerful. Build so much discipline, competence, and self-command that permission becomes irrelevant. Winning requires a tolerance for being misunderstood, because the moment you choose a path that differs from the expectations of others, someone will question your judgment. Human beings are uncomfortable with what they cannot easily categorize. When you change your habits, become more disciplined, stop chasing approval, or pursue an ambition others cannot see, people may interpret your behavior through their own fears. They may call you arrogant when you become confident, selfish when you establish boundaries, distant when you stop participating in pointless drama, or unrealistic when you refuse to accept the limits they have accepted for themselves. The dangerous part is that their opinions can become psychological mirrors. You hear the same criticism often enough and eventually begin wondering whether they are right. This is where many capable people quietly abandon their potential. They do not fail because their strategy was wrong. They fail because they could not tolerate the emotional cost of being misunderstood while building it. The strategic mind understands that approval and progress often move in opposite directions. If everyone immediately understands what you are doing, you may simply be following a path that is already familiar. Real change often looks strange before the results appear. Think about someone who leaves a comfortable career to build something uncertain, someone who distances themselves from friends who constantly pull them backward, or someone who chooses years of discipline while everyone around them chooses immediate pleasure. From the outside, their decisions may appear excessive, even foolish, but the outside observer cannot see the internal calculation. This does not mean every unconventional decision is wise. Being misunderstood is not proof that you are right. That distinction matters. You must be willing to examine criticism without becoming controlled by it. Listen carefully, extract useful information, then decide. Emotional detachment means you can hear you are making a mistake without immediately feeling compelled to prove that you are not. Sometimes the criticism is correct. Sometimes it is simply resistance to your independence. Your task is to determine which one you are hearing. Silence becomes powerful here. You do not need to defend every decision while it is still developing. The more you explain unfinished plans, the more opportunities you give others to interfere with them. Build quietly, let your actions mature before exposing them to constant judgment. People often understand results more easily than intentions. What once looked foolish can look visionary after it succeeds. What once looked ambitious can look obvious after the evidence appears. This is why patience and emotional control are weapons. You must be able to endure the period when nobody understands what you see. And you must also remain humble enough to change direction when reality proves you wrong. That balance separates strategic courage from stubbornness. If you need everyone to understand your path before you walk it, you will spend your life following roads designed by people who were never brave enough to build their own.